Imagine being forced to flee your country in order to escape to safety. If you were lucky, you had time to pack a bag. If not, you simply dropped everything and ran.
Well, there's actually three countries. It's Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And to tell you the truth, in the first month we received two families from India. They came to Mexico, paid the fare because they knew they could get across the border with the caravan. But those three countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, because of the violence and also the violence of poverty. And that's why.
As the border has become flooded with migrants, Customs and Border Protection has outsourced some of its work to churches like Our Lady of Soledad Catholic Church in Coachella Valley. Here, church volunteers not only feed the beleaguered travelers, but help them to pick out new clothes and arrange travel to their final destinations.
Operation Bienvenida is a diocesan program that is centered here primarily because of our large retreat center, and also because we're so close to the border with Mexico, and also the availability of so many volunteers to help work in the program and to receive the migrants seeking asylum.
So everything started as an emergency. It was an emergency situation, so then the bishop asked Galilee Center to receive the people, and then we're helping in there. But then once the migrant workers started coming, then they needed another place. And that's why they came to the Valley Missionary Program. This right here is the Valley Missionary Program. And that's also is a nonprofit organization that does retreats. So we have about 120 communities, basic communities or small faith communities. And then from there we get the volunteers that they help here.
Right.
The Coachella Valley's official housing shelter for asylum seekers often reaches its full capacity. The retreat center at Our Lady of Soledad Catholic Church in Coachella can house up to 105 refugees. But often the church leaders have to open halls and classrooms to accommodate the additional number of refugees.
The process is most of the migrants are refugees seeking asylum, so as soon as they cross the border, they turn themselves into immigration. They get put into asylums, detention centers, and then once they're processed and they have a family that they can be united with the United States, then the ICE with the Border Patrol brings them to our center. That's how it began. Right now, though, I believe the detention centers are overflowing, so they're just dropping them off at our center and at our church parish, and also at bus stations. And so that's why we've had to enter a crisis stage of looking for more available rooms as dormitories. Before, on the border, when asylum seekers came across, they would process them right there on the border, and then also contact their families to arrange for transportation. For whatever reason, this became overwhelming to that part of our governmental service on the border. So they started sending them to wherever they could. They found out we would accept them. And so they would be very good. They would call us up and say, "Can you take 40 tonight?" We'd say, "Yes, we can." Or we'd say, "No, we can take 30. And we did that for the first 3 months. And it was very manageable with our volunteers and with our staff. But when all of a sudden they're overwhelmed and they just began dropping people into the city of Indio or at our church.
These refugees are brought to Our Lady of Soledad to start processing paperwork and coordinating transportation to unite with family in different parts of the U.S. These are people who have permission to be here. They are fleeing violence and are seeking asylum. The family always wants a better future for their children.
When the asylum seekers get here, most of them are young families with young children, sometimes newborns. The first thing to do is make sure that they feel welcomed. Then we feed them. And then many of them haven't been able to shower for days. Then they shower. Then we make sure they have clean clothing. We have clothing donated, used clothing donated. After they get a good night's sleep, The second day we begin to follow up and contact their families. Catholic Charities does that. They have an office here with us. And then they contact the families. Several of the families can pay for bus fare. Sometimes we have to supplement the family's money so they can get reunited. A lot of the families live on the East Coast. So the people who come have no concept how large is the United States. They think Guatemala, our country might be a little bigger than Guatemala, and I have to say no. You're going to travel for 5,000 kilometers, 3,000 miles. It's going to be 3-4 days.
These are families. This is moms and dads with children. The children's, most of them are anywhere from a year to 17. It's really hard, I think, to travel with a smaller child, but we do. We have a 9-month-old, we have a 6-month-old, I had a 2-day-old. So it does happen. But the majority of the kids, a year, 12 months, 18 months to 17 years old. And these are dads trying to save the lives of their teenage sons. Most of them are boys or girls, but most of them are boys, to save them from being abducted and into the gangs.
The refugees are given hot meals, facilities for showers, laundry, and fresh clothes, as many of them come with nothing more than what they wear. The church provides temporary housing and helps migrants unite with friends and relatives across the country. Their paperwork is processed to reach out to some family or sponsors and coordinate transportation to their final destination, where they will face an immigration judge, which of course might take months, if not a year.
We have not turned away anyone who's actually arrived here on site. We will tell Immigration and Border Patrol we're full up, but many are just then dropping them off. Then we open up our parish hall and our classrooms, and that they can have a place to sleep. Then use our retreat center, especially for the showers and the bathrooms and the kitchen facilities. But last night we had to use one of our chapels for men and their sons, small sons. So we had an additional 20 we put in the chapel.
We have, of course, here at the Valley Missionary Program, many communities, faith communities. And so we contacted many of them to come here to the Valley Missionary Program to help with sorting clothes at breakfast time, lunch, and dinner, to help serve, to help clean up. Because at times, many times we're at full capacity of 120 sometimes. It's a lot of work to do. We also have volunteers that help us
Sort the clothes.
well, besides sorting the clothes, put clothes out for our immigrants to choose 2 changes, 2 pairs of pants, 2 blouses, 2 shirts. And so it's a constant, putting clothes out, making sure that we have enough of pants, of underwear, of shirts, of shoes, which of course is an issue because they are very tiny. And so we do have a need for small size pants, but we do the best that we can.
We have volunteer cooks who come in. That is just the grace and the blessing of being part of the Coachella Valley here, is that many of our people have hotel, restaurant experience. So they're able to come in and help cook for us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I go to the food bank. The Fine Food Bank has been a great blessing to us. I go twice a week, getting meat, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, snacks for the road, water. Without their help, I don't know how we would have been able to do this.
Staff from Catholic Charities help the asylum seekers contact relatives who live in the U.S. and have agreed to serve as sponsors for the migrants. The relatives typically purchase Greyhound bus tickets for the migrants, and Catholic Charities chips in when the sponsors can't afford to pay the fare. Most of the asylum seekers travel across the country to states including New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Maryland, and Florida.
Catholic Charities has been able to get monies designated especially to process and to help people get connected with their families with transportation. We've been using donations, but it got to the point where we were exhausting our donations. The state of California, April 19th, I believe, allocated monies, especially to help this program, to designate us as an official shelter and to give us funding to help hire staff and to maintain the facility, to buy food, medicine, Pampers, everything that we need. It's still not enough money, but at least with the state assistance, we can attend to the needs.
Then we need people to take them from here to the bus depot. So that's my job. So we have a little pool of people that they volunteer, so they come and they take the migrants and wait with them at the bus station until they leave in the bus. So that's mostly. So we have an average of like about 40 people leaving every day, 30 to 40 people. So that takes like about 6 to 7 drivers a day that we need to coordinate.
So the first thing we do, we welcome them. We say, welcome to our program. It might take a while for you guys to exit, but you just have to be patient. So what we do is we get their documents, ask them how their health is, their well-being, if they feel safe for where they're going. And then also we make sure the contact information is correct, because sometimes during their travel they lose all their information. And then once we have processed all that, then we call their families and let them know your family's here, they're safe, they're ready to travel. If you like, we could help make the purchase. If not, you could do it yourself, and we explain the details how to make the purchase, because sometimes it's even hard for their families to make the purchase themselves. And then they just let us know once they're confirmed, and we help them explain the tickets as well. Like we explain from like, okay, at this station, you'll be getting there from this time, and you have 30 minutes to wait until you catch your next bus. And we also like give them a little form that says, I do not understand or speak English. Please help me locate my bus.
The Valley Missionary Program and the Galilee Center have assisted more than 4,000 people so far.
Galilee Center was more of the hospitality. What we do is we're basically the travel agents. We communicate with their families, trying to see how are they going to purchase the tickets, what's best for them. Also, we have a link where they could send them money. That way they could have money for their travel, because sometimes Greyhound, the travel is up to 3 days.
Life of a refugee can be really difficult. They flee their country in order to escape to safety. Often, they do not have any time even to pick up what belongs to them, even the bare necessities. Today, it is a reality for nearly 20 million people around the world. In order to understand the situation of a refugee, we need to know the difference between a refugee and a migrant. A refugee is a displaced who has been forced to flee his or her home country because of armed conflict or persecution, and who cannot return home safely. It could result from reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion, war, persecution, or natural disaster. They are protected by international law and must not be expelled or returned to where their life and freedom are at risk. Such a person may be called an asylum seeker until granted refugee status by the contracting state or the UNHCR, United Nations Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. A migrant is someone who chooses to resettle in another country in search of a better life. It is a conscious choice. Therefore, they can make plans, arrange, and even take their belongings. They are also free to return home at any time if things do not work out as they planned.
That's another question why what we ask is what's the reason? What brought you to this country? And a big majority of them are poverty, that they have no jobs, they have no food. They make, one of them was telling me that she makes like, I think she said $5 a week. and she has 3 kids. So she came herself with her 3 kids, just because she needs to provide food for them.
You know, they risk their lives to give a better life to their children. But also we have a lot of violence, extortion. They've been persecuted.
There's no food, there's no water, there's no school. The government's not helping them. It just breaks my heart. And to come here and to see them get so happy when we hand them an orange or when I hand them an apple or a banana.
Refugees typically report poorer levels of health compared to other immigrants and the non-immigrant population. Apart from physical wounds or starvation, a large percentage of refugees develop symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, or depression. These long-term mental problems can severely impede the functionality of the person in everyday situations. It involves anxiety, over-alertness, sleeplessness, chronic fatigue syndrome, motor difficulties, failing short-term memory, amnesia, nightmares, and sleep paralysis.
The first thing we see in their eyes is confusion, because they don't know if they're going to be treated like they were treated at the detention centers. As soon as we welcome them with smiles, and especially we feed them with good food, we have good cooks, we make sure they get good food, then they respond with smiles, with trust, then they open up. I have a wonderful job to have because I'm probably the first gringo face they see that smiles and is glad to see them because they've not seen that from the people from our country.
When I look into their eyes when they first come, there's just a huge sense of fear and sense of unknown. After 2 or 3 days of rest, good food, there's a sense of hope. One of the things that happened to me on Easter Sunday, I was here working, and the thing that struck me the most when they were getting off the bus from the Border Patrol was I looked into their eyes and I said, this is the resurrected Christ, right here in front of my eyes, right here, right now, seeking a new life, a new hope, and a new sense of peace. That was an awe moment that I'll never forget. So that was just one of those moments that will always be part of my memory of working in this program, to see their fear, but then to also see their sense of hope.
Refugee populations consist of people who are terrified and are away from familiar surroundings. There can be instances of exploitation at the hands of enforcement officials or citizens of the host country.
We have the stories because we talk to the people. There's trauma caused. Most of the people now are traveling in caravans. That's for safety. But even traveling in caravans are being taken advantage of because they have to pass through borders, like the Mexican border, and they have to pay bribes, or they get taken of the little monies they have. Others because they have to get onto buses or trucks will take them. They get shaken down for money.
Pope Francis established his concern for the plight of migrants and refugees on his very first trip outside of Rome, just months after his election as Pope. On the Italian island of Lampedusa, a way station for many refugees making their way to Europe, he celebrated Mass and commemorated the thousands who have died at sea. Their fate, he said, confronts us with the same question that God put to Cain. Where is your brother? The culture of comfort, which makes us think only of ourselves, makes us insensitive to the cries of other people, makes us live in soap bubbles, which, however lovely, are insubstantial. We have become used to the suffering of others. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't concern me. It's none of my business. For the Pope, the issue is not only the plight of defenseless people, forced to contend with heartless traffickers and the perils of a journey. It is fundamentally a question that God puts to the rest of us, especially Christians. Where are we? Who are we? He proposes, in essence, a single, simple message, repeated in 100 different ways. Migrants and refugees are human beings, precious in the eyes of God. They are our brothers and sisters. They are worthy of respect. What we do for them, we do directly for Christ.
About the feeling of the people, I think, you know, those that are here because they truly believe, you know, in God's word of taking care of our brothers and sisters in Christ, no matter where they're from.
Yeah.
So I believe, you know, there's not a whole lot of people, I think, that believe that, and that's why we don't have as many volunteers as we should have.
And so we haven't had any openly people complaining about. Sometimes in the media you hear a couple of things, but most of it, I will say 98% of the people have been receptive, and they know maybe they don't get involved, but they at least they don't go against it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. But I think if a person comes and helps them and serves them, their life changes. The one that serves, because they come to understand that they are not coming to take anybody's job. Yeah. They're not coming to, you know, to create any problems, but they just come because they want a better future. Yeah. And you can truly see a transformation in them, because this is kind of like a temporary place until they get home. So you see them the day they come, you know, they all raggedy, sad, you know, you know, really, really bad in bad situation. By the second day, the third day, they're smiling, they're beaming. And that is the grace of God.
The parishioners and all the small faith communities of our missionary program, for the most part, have been very accepting, very compassionate, have donated clothing. Many have also donated time to serve the meals, or to attend to the families, or to be chauffeurs to drive families to the bus stations. They've also had collections that when we needed money immediately. So the parish and the retreat center has been very open-hearted about this. It's got to the point where we needed more paid staff, because volunteers, they have their families and they have their jobs, and they also get tired.
I can't say resistance, no. People help to the best of their ability. They may not be able to become as cooks, but maybe they can help be God's Uber drivers right now and help us get them to the bus station. They're helping us with all the donations, the hygiene bags, socks, underwear, clothing, toys, coloring books, crayons.
Migration is not a new culture. We see it in the Hebrew Scriptures. Abraham was asked by God to go to a new country, leaving his own land and people. The Israelites migrated from Egypt in the famous Exodus. They had to wander for 40 years before they settled in Palestine, the Promised Land. Even the Holy Family, the parents of Jesus, had to flee to Egypt to protect the infant Jesus. Therefore, problems of migration and refugees is not anything new. It is as old as humanity. Pope stresses that the progress of a nation depends above all on our openness to being touched and moved by those who knock at our door. He calls modern times the era of migration.
I think it's humbled me a little bit. I think it's brought me a sense of great peace and a great joy and hope for a hopeless people, the poor and abandoned. How more scripture-based can we be than to support and outreach to support families, number one, and to support the poor and abandoned. And right now, these asylum seekers are the poor and abandoned. They're the poor and abandoned Christ right in front of us.
This is not a burden. It's work, but it's very much in our gospel call. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was in prison, you visited me. I can see no clearer mandate from Jesus than to attend to young families fleeing violence. The families come with so much hope and a deep faith and a trust in institutions, especially the church. Not all of those who come are Catholic. There's a lot of evangelicals. Maybe the majority are evangelicals, especially from Guatemala. But they know that they're safe with us, and they also feel free to worship and pray the way that they want to.
It has been incorrectly named as an immigration problem that can be solved only with enhanced border controls. What we need is to target the root causes of this massive displacement. The answer is not more militarization of the border or callous treatment of refugees and children, but rather a reimagined approach to relations in the region.
They want to work. They want to work. They want to be part of a new life. They want a new life for their children, and that they cross the border legally. They are here legally seeking asylum.
If people were to come and just be here one day, they would get a sense of, how wonderful the people are. They're not what, politicians describe them as terrorists or, druggists, or, they're here to harm others. I mean, these are gentle, well-meaning, and, faithful people that just want a better life for their kids.